Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 306 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to look at the topic of moving from an individual contributor to a leader and why sometimes we struggle with that transition, because actually we need to generate our own momentum now. And I'll talk more about that. So let's get into this right now. Now, a big challenge that many leaders go through is when they're in that phase of transitioning from an individual contributor, which means you are working as part of the team, doing technical work, for example, and now you're moving into a leadership role. And presumably, and often that means that you've done a really good job as an individual contributor, and now you are moving into that leadership space. So the whole focus of your role changes, because before you were doing individual work, maybe you're working in the team, but you were doing, you had individual responsibilities to produce some product or service or whatever it might be. And now you are moving to a bigger picture view where you're overseeing the work and having to drive the results rather than just focus on your individual piece. Now, firstly, let's look at why this can be such a challenge for leaders moving from that individual role into that team leader role. Well, firstly, most leaders got to where they are by doing individual contribution work. So that could be, maybe you're an engineer, then you became the engineering manager, or maybe you were a business analyst and then you became the manager of projects or something like that. So you've used your technical skills as a springboard into that management role. And a lot of the time we do that because we get more money from going into leadership roles. So that's an often quoted reason as to why people do that, but also because we enjoy that advancement as well. But the interesting thing about that change is you're no longer doing necessarily as much of that technical work that you used to do. So if you used to be, like me, a software developer, but now you're the software team leader, you might spend more of your time doing people-related things and setting the direction than actually doing the technical work. And the challenge is with that is that you were probably good at what you were doing before. So you were probably good at doing the technical work, and that's probably why you got promoted into that leadership role, which means there's a good chance you achieve some sort of satisfaction out of being good at that technical work and delivering things. So because of that change, now you'll be doing less of the technical work and more of the team leadership work. You tend to feel less valuable in your role, and that's been my experience, was that I felt less valuable because I'm not delivering the product or the service or the thing that I used to deliver. I'm not using so many of my technical skills anymore. And that is a challenge because people can lose motivation when they move into that leadership space. Another reason why leaders struggle with this transition is, as an individual contributor, there's a good chance you used to really just react to the situation that was happening. So, for example, a customer comes into the store. Let's say you're on the floor as a retail person. Customer comes into the store, you serve that customer. Now, you are reacting to that customer entering the store. Or let's say someone calls you on the phone. You're reacting to that phone call and you're talking to that person on the phone. Or maybe a request comes in, there's a new project, a new request comes in, some senior stakeholder wants this project delivered, you are reacting to that request and you're creating the project and delivering that project. So essentially, an individual contributor responds or reacts to the work that is given to them at any given time. And in many ways, that is very easy because you just wait for the request to happen and then you deliver the work or you do the work to satisfy whatever request that might be. But the interesting thing about moving into a leadership role is you now set that direction and the speed of execution. Let's say you're working on the service desk or a help desk Someone raises a ticket, you have to fix the ticket. Well, you now have to coordinate the tickets maybe. You have to gather them, you have to assign them to people. You don't necessarily do the work yourself. And so you're not sitting there waiting for the ticket. You have to be more proactive. And the challenging thing with this is, for many leaders, is if you didn't do the individual work, let's say I do doing technical work in the team, my manager gives me a task to do and I do the task. Well, let's say I don't do the task fast enough or the quality is not good. I get pretty quick feedback on that because my manager says, "Where's that work? Why haven't you done that yet?" And I know that I have to deliver it at a certain time. But when you're the leader and you're planning and you're managing people and you're supporting your team, maybe you're allocating work to people, but you're not doing the technical work yourself, the consequences of not doing that leadership stuff properly or well are not really obvious straight away. So I used to think about this in my project and program management roles, right? So it's my role. If I'm working as a technical person in a project team, the project manager will tell me what to do and I have to do that thing straight away or whenever it's required. And they will keep asking me, how's that thing going? And they'll keep checking in. As the project manager, for example, if you moved into that role, you are the one checking in. So you have to generate that momentum rather than reacting to situations because your boss is probably not going to know if things aren't happening until it's too late. So sometimes you have to generate that momentum for yourself. And what I found was when I moved into leadership roles, I was used to reacting and doing the work, and now I have to set the pace and get my team working at a certain velocity, let's call it, or get them working at a certain speed to a certain deadline. I'm setting the direction. I'm saying, hey, here's what we're going to work on. Here's the project we're going to do. Here's the service we're going to create. And that is a big change because no one's hounding you every day for progress on that. So let's say you're in a team leader role and you're setting the direction and the speed. You're doing some planning for the future. Your boss probably isn't going to ask you every day, how's that plan going? A lot of the time, that's a long-term goal to reach. And therefore, you haven't really got that pressure. So what I find is a lot of leaders have to generate that pressure for themselves, and that can be a really hard transition. So that's another thing that I think leaders struggle with. And as part of my role, I coach doctors as well sometimes, and I coach them in leadership type topics, right? And interestingly, what you notice with doctors when they go from being a doctor to some sort of manager or leader in the medical space is they suffer from this problem a lot because they are used to having to, let's say they work in a hospital, patient comes in, they have to treat the patient, they are reacting to that patient, right? So they fix the patient, that patient goes away, another one comes in. And so they're actually just running from one patient to another because often they're overworked and understaffed. And so they don't really have time to concentrate or think about anything else. They just serve the patients, treat the patient gets better, they go away, and they respond to the next one. But when they go into the management role, they start to realize that, hey, I'm no longer doing that work anymore and, treating the patients directly so much. So I have to think about, what could we improve here? What's the plan? What's not working? Are my people feeling supported? And that's a very different way of thinking. And if your identity is such that do you enjoy the outcomes of treating patients and you're no longer doing it as much, then you may find you have a big drop in motivation. So that's something I find with my doctor clients as well. So how do you fix this? I mean, how do you improve this? Because the reality is, as a leader, the higher you go, the less likely it is that you will be doing technical work. You're more likely to be doing strategic work and using all those people skills you have. Well, one of the big things I think is helpful here is to reframe your role or the way you think about your role. So previously, when you were an individual contributor, your role was valuable because you delivered some sort of product or service or outcome, some sort of technical work, or you served a customer, for example, or you treated a patient. Now it's time to reframe the value that your role brings because The reason a leader's role is valuable is because they set direction, they set goals, they have a bigger picture point of view, they look for improvements, they look to remove roadblocks for the people working for them, they provide support mechanisms for the team members around them, and they also challenge the way things are currently done and look to improve them. So they're always looking to the future and they're thinking forward. Okay, where are we going? What are we going to do differently? What's the next challenge? How can we overcome it? So a leader is always looking ahead, whereas team members are often looking to today. And that's the difference. You need both time horizons to be successful in a team. So the leader is really doing the forward thinking, and the team members are looking at, okay, what do we have to deliver right now or this week? And so I think it's about reframing your role and making sure that you realize that, well, the value my role brings is no longer about the individual contribution. It's about helping the team work better together, removing roadblocks and all those good things. Another thing to focus on, I think, as well, is particularly if you're an individual contributor and you are a bit of a people-focused person, you might find that you don't naturally have a goal-setting mindset. You're more concerned about how are my people feeling, how do I support them? And that's a good thing as well, but it has the drawback of not being so results-focused. So I think another thing to work on here is to think about, okay, am I setting goals? Am I setting the direction for my team enough? And when I was in leadership roles, I had to be intentional about doing that a little bit more than I would normally because it wasn't my natural thing. My natural inclination was to think about the people. How are they feeling? How can I support them and help them get better? But actually, as a leader, you're going to have to deliver results as well. And so maybe shifting your focus to more of a results focus can be beneficial. And then, making sure you set clear goals and communicate those things with your team, that's another way to show value and just make sure that you're doing that leader role as opposed to slipping into that individual contributor role. One last thing I will say is sometimes I don't think it's a bad idea to still do a little bit of technical work if you think it helps you to keep your hand in, as in keep your knowledge of the industry and the team's technical work up so you can still provide good support for your team. So, for example, I used to coach a few years ago an accountant or a managing accountant, and they still occasionally took on a little side project because it helped them stay up to date with the industry regulations and legislation around accounting laws and things, accounting rules. And that helped them keep up to date because they were still had to know that stuff and learn that new knowledge that was changing in the industry. So I don't think that's really a bad thing to do those sort of things from time to time, as long as it's not taking up all your time and reducing the time that you get to spend with your team. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this topic of basically you have to generate your own momentum. So you're going from a bit of a doer to more of a leadership role. So hopefully that has helped you think about these challenges. And if you need help in your situation, I do help a lot of leaders with this. And as I said, I coach doctors as well. And sometimes this is one of their biggest challenges. So yeah, you can get in touch on the show notes page, thoughtleader.com/podcast/306. You'll see a link to my leadership coaching page there. And yeah, book your free discovery call, just have a chat about what you think coaching can do for you and see whether it's a good fit to work together. We can go from there. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Just get in touch if you think it could be helpful. All right. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you found the episode helpful, and I'll be back next week.